I still remember the sound of the door creaking, that sharp, breath-stealing moment when everything inside me froze.
It wasn't supposed to happen like that.
I wasn't supposed to be there, standing in front of my sister's mirror, wrapped in her soft lavender dress, the hem brushing my knees like a whisper I'd been dreaming of for years. The fabric shimmered faintly in the afternoon light, and for a fleeting second, I'd forgotten the world outside that room existed. Then I heard her voice. "What are you doing?" The words hit harder than any shout could. Quiet, disbelieving, but heavy, like they carried the whole weight of reality I'd been avoiding. I turned slowly, my reflection flickering behind me. She stood by the door, eyes wide, one hand still gripping the frame as if steadying herself. The look on her face wasn't anger, not yet. It was confusion, curiosity, maybe even hurt. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The silence stretched so long I could hear my heartbeat in my ears. I tried to speak, but the words tangled somewhere between my throat and my shame. She blinked, taking a slow step closer. Her voice softened, uncertain. "Are those my clothes?" I wanted to vanish, to melt into the carpet, to disappear into the mirror, to erase that moment before it could stain everything that came after. But all I could do was nod, helplessly, as my reflection trembled beside me. Part someone else entirely. She looked at me for a long time, really looked, not at the dress, not at the makeup I'd clumsily borrowed from her drawer, but at me. And then she said something I'll never forget. "I didn't know you looked like that when you smiled." I didn't even realize I'd been smiling. It was faint, almost invisible, but it was there, that fragile little trace of freedom that had escaped before fear could bury it. Her tone wasn't cruel. It wasn't mocking. It was quiet, almost curious, as if she'd just discovered something she couldn't quite understand but didn't want to destroy. I didn't know what to say. My throat tightened and tears burned behind my eyes. I whispered, barely audible, "Please don't tell anyone." She hesitated, then shook her head. "I won't. But can you tell me why?" That question hung between us like smoke, soft, inescapable, and impossible to ignore. And in that moment, I realized I had no simple answer. Only 1,000 pieces of truth I'd been too scared to assemble. For a long time, neither of us moved. The air felt dense, heavy with the weight of things that couldn't be unspoken. My hands trembled against the soft folds of her lavender dress, and I could hear my own pulse thudding in my ears, fast and uneven. My sister, Alina, finally took another step into the room. The sound of the door clicking shut behind her made my stomach twist, a sound that felt both like safety and entrapment. She didn't yell. She didn't laugh. She just stared at me with this strange look, part confusion, part concern, and something else I couldn't read. She started, then stopped, her brow furrowing slightly. "I don't get it. Why my clothes?" The question wasn't cruel, but it still stung. I lowered my eyes, my voice barely above a whisper. "Because they make me feel calm." Alina tilted her head. "Calm?" I nodded. "When I wear them, I feel quiet inside. Like I can breathe without thinking too much." She didn't answer right away. She just looked at me, studying every little detail, the smeared lipstick, the shaky mascara, the way I couldn't meet her eyes. I felt like she was seeing through me, peeling away every wall I'd built to keep this part of me hidden. Finally, she sighed softly and walked toward her bed. She sat down, folding her arms. "Okay," she said. "I'm not mad. I just didn't expect this." The relief that washed over me was so strong it almost made me dizzy. I sat down at the edge of the vanity chair, the mirror still catching the faint shimmer of lavender across my shoulders. She leaned forward, resting her elbows on her knees. "So how long?" she asked. I hesitated. "Since I was 13. Maybe earlier." Her eyes widened slightly. "You've been hiding it that long?" I nodded. I didn't think anyone would understand. She was quiet for a moment, then whispered, "I wish you'd told me." That hit me harder than I expected. My throat tightened, and I stared down at my hands, fingers knotted together. I didn't even know how to tell myself. I said quietly. She gave me a small, crooked smile, the kind she used when she didn't know how to handle her own emotions. Well, you're definitely not borrowing my favorite lipstick again, she said softly, and I actually laughed. Just a breath, but it was real. Then, unexpectedly, she stood up, walked over to her closet, and pulled something from the back, a pale pink cardigan I'd seen her wear once. Try this instead, she said, holding it out. I blinked, stunned. You're serious? She nodded, her expression unreadable. If we're doing this, might as well do it right. My fingers brushed against the soft fabric as I took it from her, and for the first time, the tension between us eased. It wasn't approval, not yet, but it was understanding, a fragile thread forming where fear used to live. As I slipped into the cardigan, she said something so simple it made my eyes sting. You don't look weird, she said. You just look peaceful. I wanted to say thank you, but the words got lost somewhere between my heart and my throat. All I could manage was a quiet, trembling smile in the mirror, one that, this time, didn't feel like hiding. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I replayed the moment over and over. The door creaking open, her voice, her question, and then that small act of kindness. That cardigan. That unexpected piece. It should have been terrifying. Being caught should have been a disaster. But instead, something had shifted between us, like a door opening that neither of us had realized was there. The next morning, I expected things to go back to normal. I expected awkward silence at breakfast, or maybe a joke meant to brush it all under the rug. But Alina was quiet.
Calm.
She just poured coffee and said, "You want some too?" as if nothing had happened. I hesitated, watching her closely. "You're not mad," she shrugged, still a little confused. "But I'm not mad." Then, after a pause, she added, "You seemed happier last night than I've seen you in years." The words hit me deeper than she probably realized. I looked down at my cup, the steam curling in little ghostly spirals. "It's weird," I said softly. For a few minutes, it felt like I wasn't pretending. She glanced up. Pretending to be what? I swallowed. Myself. The room went quiet again. The clock ticked on the wall. Somewhere outside, a car door slammed. Then Alina said something that made my chest ache. "You don't have to hide who you are in front of me." I looked up, startled, but her eyes were steady. She wasn't smiling this time. She meant it. For a while, we didn't say much else. But after breakfast, as she was heading out to meet a friend, she stopped by the doorway and said, "If you ever want help, with makeup or whatever, just ask." And then she was gone. It took me a full minute to realize I was crying. Not because I was sad, but because no one had ever said something like that to me before. The rest of the day passed in a haze. My mind kept drifting between fear and possibility. What if she told someone? What if she regretted being kind? But under all that anxiety was something new, a faint, glowing thread of hope. That evening, when she came home, she handed me a small bag. "Here," she said casually. "You left a bit of a mess in my room, so I figured you might want your own stuff." Inside the bag were a few makeup items, mascara, lip gloss, foundation, and, tucked underneath, a folded note. "Everyone deserves to feel like themselves." I sat there staring at it for a long time, my heart pounding so hard it almost hurt. That night, when I stood in front of the mirror again, the same one where everything had gone wrong and right all at once, I felt different. Not just nervous or guilty, but seen. And for the first time, when I looked at my reflection, I whispered the words I'd been too scared to say out loud for years. "Hi, I'm her." It was shaky, barely a whisper, but it was real. I smiled at my reflection, tears slipping down my cheeks. And behind me, through the crack in the door, I thought I saw Alina's shadow pause, and then quietly, without saying a word, close the door to give me privacy. The days that followed felt strangely lighter, like I was walking through the same world, but breathing a different kind of air. Alina didn't mention that night again, but something had changed between us, something subtle, unspoken. It wasn't about approval. It was about space. She gave me room to exist without explaining myself. One afternoon, I came home from work and found her sitting cross-legged on the floor with a pile of makeup spread out in front of her. She looked up, grinning. Practice time. I froze in the doorway. For what? She patted the spot beside her. You said you wanted to learn, right? Well, lesson 1, foundation that actually matches your skin. I laughed nervously, but I sat down. My hands shook as I picked up a brush. I don't even know where to start. That's fine, she said. Everyone starts somewhere. She leaned over, dabbing a bit of color along my jawline.
See?
It's not about hiding. It's about balance. There was no teasing in her voice. No pity either. Just calm instruction, the kind she used when she was helping someone she cared about. As she guided my hands, explaining each small motion, something inside me started to quiet. The usual rush of fear wasn't there. Instead, I felt a slow warmth spreading from somewhere deep in my chest. When we were done, she handed me a mirror. Okay, she said softly. Now look. The person staring back at me wasn't a stranger anymore. My eyes looked softer, brighter somehow. The faint shimmer on my lips caught the light in a way that made me smile without thinking. Alina tilted her head. There she is. I blinked. Who? You, she said simply. The word hit harder than I expected. It wasn't said with sarcasm or doubt, just quiet certainty. For the first time, someone else saw her too. Later that evening, I found her in the kitchen washing brushes. Why are you helping me? I asked quietly.
She paused.
Because I think hiding hurts you, she said. And I don't want to be the reason you stay small. Her words settled into me like light through water, gentle, clear, impossible to forget. That night, I took one last look in the mirror before bed. The makeup was mostly gone, the hair slightly tousled, but the feeling remained, like something in me had finally found room to breathe. And as I turned off the light, I realized something simple, but terrifyingly beautiful. I didn't want to go back. It started small, a knock on the door when I least expected it. I was still wearing the soft lavender sweater Alina had lent me, the one that made my shoulders look narrower. My face was clean, but there was still a faint shimmer from the tinted balm I'd tried that morning. I wasn't supposed to feel nervous, but the sound of that knock made my heart lurch. Alina peeked from the hallway. Relax, she whispered. It's just Sarah. Sarah, her best friend since college. Loud, funny, always around. The one person I wasn't ready for. Before I could change, Sarah stepped inside. Her eyes swept over me, then stopped. I could feel it, the flicker of recognition, curiosity, maybe even realization. Hey, she said finally, smiling. Nice sweater. My voice caught in my throat. Thanks. It's, Alina's. Sarah nodded slowly, like she already knew. Then she turned to Alina and grinned. You didn't tell me your brother has better style than you. The air loosened just a bit. Alina laughed, rolling her eyes. Don't encourage him. He's already stealing my clothes. I managed to smile, even laugh a little, but the rest of me felt like glass. Later, after Sarah left, I slumped on the couch. She noticed, I said. Alina sat down beside me. Of course she did. But she didn't judge you. I stared at the ceiling. Yeah, but she could have. She tilted her head. You know what she told me before leaving? She said she's proud of you. That stopped me cold. Proud. She said it's brave to show who you are, even if you're still figuring it out. The word brave didn't fit how I felt.
I didn't feel brave.
I felt fragile, like one wrong look could undo all the small pieces I'd started to put together. But somewhere under the fear, a spark flickered. A few days later, I found myself standing in front of my closet. The usual row of shirts and jeans looked dull. My hand hovered, then drifted toward a floral blouse Alina had left on my bed the night before. I held it against me just for a second. It wasn't about pretending. It was about breathing differently, finally deeply. When I looked in a mirror, I saw someone softer, more honest. Someone not performing, just existing. And in that reflection, I heard Alina's voice again. There she is. That evening, when I walked out wearing it, she just smiled. No questions. No lectures. Just quiet approval. And in that silence, something shifted between us again. I wasn't just her brother trying on clothes anymore. I was becoming someone else, someone real. Someone I didn't need to hide from. It happened on a Sunday afternoon, one of those quiet days when sunlight leaks softly through the curtains and time feels slower. Alina had convinced me to go out for coffee with her. At first, I said no. The idea of stepping outside dressed this way made my stomach twist. But she insisted gently, "You don't have to hide to deserve a cup of coffee." So I agreed. We chose a small cafe a few blocks away, the kind where no one really knew us. I wore jeans and a loose pastel top. Nothing flashy, but enough to feel like me. The walk there felt longer than usual. Every step echoed with self-consciousness. I could hear the soft rhythm of my sneakers against the pavement, feel my hair brushing my cheek. Each sound felt magnified, like the world was watching, even when it wasn't. Alina talked the whole way, light chatter about work, music, anything to keep me from shrinking into my thoughts. But my heart kept thudding faster. When we reached the cafe, a gust of air greeted us, carrying the scent of espresso and vanilla. We ordered drinks, her latte, my iced caramel, something I couldn't even pronounce, and found a seat by the window. For a while, it was perfect. No stares. No whispers. Just two people, laughing over nothing. Until a voice behind me said my name. "Hey, is that you?" I turned slowly and froze. It was my old classmate Ahmed. We hadn't seen each other in years. His expression shifted, surprise first, then confusion, then something like hesitation. His eyes flicked from my hair to my clothes, then back to my face. "It's been a while," I managed to say, my throat dry. "Yeah," he said softly, still looking uncertain. "You all look different." Alina jumped in with effortless calm. "He's just exploring a little self-expression. Trying something new." Ahmed nodded slowly. "Cool," he said finally. "You look happy." That one word, happy, cut through the noise in my chest. When he left, I sat there in silence, fingers trembling slightly around my cup. Alina leaned forward, her eyes warm.
See?
The world didn't end. I exhaled, a shaky laugh slipping out. It almost did. But the truth was, it didn't. And something about that realization felt like oxygen. For the first time, being seen didn't destroy me. It freed me. As we walked home, the sun began to set, painting the sky in streaks of gold and rose. And in that fading light, I realized something I hadn't dared to before. I didn't just want to be accepted. I wanted to belong, fully, visibly, beautifully. And maybe, just maybe, I was ready to start trying. That evening, when I got home, I sat on my bed and stared at the reflection in my mirror for a long time. The soft curls of my hair brushed my shoulders. The faint trace of lip balm shimmered under the lamplight. I looked like myself, but more than that, I felt like myself. And for the first time in years, that didn't scare me. The next few weeks passed in quiet ripples. I stopped rushing to change before leaving my room. I started wearing softer clothes at home, without guilt. And when I laughed, it sounded less like an apology. But change, real change, never stays hidden. One evening, I hadn't seen her in months. She called that morning and said, "I was in the neighborhood. Beta, thought I'd drop by." Alina and I exchanged a look. My stomach flipped. By the time the doorbell rang, my heart was pounding so loud I could barely hear her voice through the door. I was wearing a simple cardigan over a light floral top. Nothing bold, but undeniably me. I could have changed. I almost did. But then I saw my reflection again, calm, honest, and something inside whispered, "Not this time." When I opened the door, my mother froze. Just for a moment. Her eyes darted across my face, down to my clothes, and back up again. She didn't say anything at first. Just breathed out softly and smiled, a small, uncertain smile that trembled like it didn't know whether it belonged. "You look different," she said finally. I swallowed hard.
Yeah.
"I guess I do." Alina stepped in with tea, bless her, trying to ease the tension. "He's been learning a lot about himself lately," she said gently. My mother's eyes softened, but the confusion lingered. Is this something you like? She asked, voice careful. I nodded. It's something that feels right. Like I'm finally breathing the way I was meant to. For a long moment, she said nothing. The ticking of the wall clock filled the silence. Then, finally, she reached across the table and took my hand. I don't understand everything, she said quietly, but I love you. That won't change. The words hit harder than I expected. Not perfect. Not total understanding. But love. Unconditional. Trembling, real. I wanted to cry. I wanted to hug her. I wanted to tell her that for years, I thought that love would disappear if she saw this part of me. But it didn't. When she left later that evening, she paused at the door and smiled faintly. You look happy, she said, the same words Ahmed had used. And as the door closed behind her, I stood there, stunned by how heavy and light that moment felt all at once. For the first time, I wasn't hiding from family. I wasn't hiding from the mirror. And even if the world still didn't understand a small part of it, my world finally did. Confidence didn't arrive like a lightning bolt. It crept in quietly, like morning light through half-closed curtains. A week after my mother's visit, I found myself standing in front of my closet again. The rows of clothes no longer looked like costumes or disguises. They were choices, small pieces of me waiting to be worn. Alina walked in and leaned against the doorframe, smiling. You've been standing there for 10 minutes, she teased. I know, I said, half laughing. It feels different now. Like, I don't have to ask for permission anymore. She nodded. That's the whole point, isn't it? You get to decide who you are. That night, she invited me to a small get-together with her coworkers. Nothing fancy, just coffee and music at a rooftop cafe. Normally, I would have said no, but something inside me whispered, try.
So I did.
I wore a simple blue blouse, my favorite one, paired with dark jeans. Nothing extravagant, but undeniably me. When we arrived, I could feel the familiar wave of nerves, that sense of everyone's going to stare. But, to my surprise, they didn't. Alina's friends were warm, funny, unbothered. They talked to me like I was just part of the group. No second glances, no awkward pauses. At one point, a woman named Zara complimented my outfit. That color suits you, she said with an easy smile. I thanked her, and something inside me glowed. Not because of the compliment itself, but because it was said without hesitation. No judgment. No subtext. Just kindness. Later, as we all watched the city lights flicker below, I realized how far I'd come from that first moment of panic, the day Alina found me in her room. Back then, I thought discovery meant disaster. But standing here now, surrounded by laughter and the hum of life, I finally understood. Discovery could mean becoming. As we walked home that night, the wind picked up, soft, cool, full of movement. Alina looked over and said, You know, you carry yourself differently now. I smiled. I think I finally believe I'm allowed to. She squeezed my hand. Good. Because you've always been allowed to. The city lights shimmered in the distance, and for once, they didn't look unreachable. They looked like reflections, countless tiny mirrors catching the same truth I'd just learned. That I didn't need to pretend to be someone worth loving. I already was. It happened one evening when the air felt thick with rain and promise. I was sitting by the window, the city lights shimmering across the glass, when Alina called out from the other room. Hey, she said, holding up her phone. There's this open mic night downtown. Themes becoming. You should come. Tell your story. I laughed, half out of disbelief, half out of fear. Tell my story? You mean this story? She nodded, her eyes soft but steady.
Yes.
The world could use it. The idea terrified me. For years, I'd built my life on silence, on keeping this part of myself contained, hidden behind locked doors and nervous laughter. But something in her voice, something calm and certain, made me pause. So I said yes. That night, I stood backstage at a small cafe lit by strings of golden lights. My hands trembled around the note cards I wasn't even sure I'd use. The hum of quiet conversations filled the air. When my name was called, I stepped up to the mic. At first, I could barely breathe. Faces blurred in front of me. My voice shook when I began. I spent years pretending not to see the person staring back at me in the mirror. She was quiet, patient, waiting for permission to exist. I thought if I ignored her long enough, she'd fade. But she didn't. She just learned to wait. The room fell silent. I spoke about Alina, about fear, about the first time I looked at myself and didn't want to look away. I spoke about being caught and how that moment, which once felt like the end, became my beginning. I didn't cry until I reached the last line. She saw the girl inside me, I said softly. And for the first time, I saw her too. There was a stillness afterward, then applause, quiet but real. I saw Alina in the back, eyes shining, hands clasped together. When I stepped off stage, I felt something settle inside me. Not pride, not relief, but peace. It wasn't about clothes or makeup or what anyone else saw. It was about finally choosing to see myself. Later, as we walked home, rain began to fall, gentle, cool, washing the streets clean. I lifted my face to the sky, the drops catching in my hair. I think I'm finally okay, I said. Alina smiled. You've always been okay. You just had to believe it. And in that soft, rain-drenched night, I did. Because the girl inside me wasn't waiting anymore. She was walking beside me, free, alive, and finally seen. Cloud with rain, sparkling heart.